what is up, guys? Welcome back to episode 9 of the Watcast. It is so good to be back in Studio W, just doing the gosh darn thing.
Big facts.
This is honestly like the funnest thing ever. I'm not sure if you guys have seen us having fun while we're doing this, but this is just an honor and a privilege, and just a great time, honestly. We got a special guest coming up that I'm really excited to get to talk to. But Josh is gonna give us that introduction.
So this week we're gonna get it to have a conversation on faith and adversity and God's presence in adversity. So God's presence and our faith in the midst of those seemingly impossible times and those just hardships that come, because they do come. And God is present in them, and we can be faithful in them. So we're going to hear some perspectives on that and some insight and just some people's own personal experience on that. And we're going to get to hear from, if you remember, back from the first 2 episodes when Q and I shared our own stories. Q shared about someone who is very near and dear to his heart. His name is Gabe, and he's going to get to sit with Q tonight in this conversation, and I'm excited for that. I'm excited for Q. I know he's looking forward to it. So without further ado, please welcome Gabe Hajjar.
So thank you for letting me come on the show. This is a privilege and an honor.
Absolutely. This is like the prophecy, to be honest. All right, so a little bit of backstory before we get into this. For those at home watching, for those that don't know Gabriel Hajjar, he's kind of a legend on campus, whether he's skating down the ODP parking garage at like a bajillion miles per hour, or just straight up having lightsaber battles in the middle of the street. This guy is honestly one of the most prominent mentors I've ever had in my life, and I wouldn't be the me that I am today probably without his guidance and love and just leadership in my life, which is awesome. I still can't stop thanking him, honestly, and I know it's getting annoying, but whatever, right?
Dude, I'm so honored. Thank you.
Absolutely. So without further ado, I guess, let's talk about what sucks.
Where were we? Yes, the pit of despair.
So, adversity, right? I guess for a quick rundown for those who don't know what adversity is, because I'm sure there's somebody out there that's like, oh, what's adversity? Click and open another tab to hit up that dictionary.com. Yeah, don't worry, bro. We got you. Don't even worry about it. So
get my dictionary.com ready right now.
Absolutely. So you can fact check me on this one.
Bet. No. I'm just going to have my phone up just in case so I can look more podcasty.
Very cool. Very cool. So adversity is just any bad thing or hardship that comes into life, whether it be stubbing your toe on a dresser, or losing a dear friend, or it's all in the same thing, right? Yeah. And I want to talk about, or rather I want to talk to you about where's God in all of that? Ooh. Because I was kind of doing some reflecting on my own story. Shout out to Watcast episode 1.
Hey.
Go watch it. No.
Link in the description
down below.
Yeah,
link in the description. Just my experiences coming up to now were just chock full of bad. Bad that the world was at fault for, and bad that I was at fault for. And it really tore me up, right? And when I reflect on my story and my testimony and where it's brought me, I'm surprised that God was even able to kind of pull me out of that deep hole that I was in, right? Because anyone in my position could have easily been like, well, if the world is like this and Christians are like this, then God is bad, and if that's what the reflection is, then I don't like God, and then that's it for them. And they made their decision.
Yeah.
There are people that are already decided on that now, and there are people that are still kind of wrestling with the idea of where is God in all of this. There are people that I know that have spent nights crying themselves to sleep, yelling out to God, "Where are you while I'm hurting?" So we're gonna break this down here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think adversity is really interesting, mainly in the prospect of looking at it and recognizing what worldview lens you are looking at the adversity through, right? So just a little bit of a rundown of my story for those of you who don't know. So my family is a family of immigrants. They were fleeing from the 25-year three-way civil war in Lebanon with their respective families while they were young children. Well, my mom was 9 months old. My dad was 14 years old, with different families. They were both from the same small town, and they actually, through their different life stories, ended up meeting here in a small bakery down in 5th Street where my grandparents owned it. And from there, I mean, the adversity of adapting to a different culture with different perspectives, with different ideologies, with different theologies, and all the vast intricacies of amalgamating into a very conservative Arabic lifestyle into what would be perceived as the most erroneous westernized culture was adversity in and of itself for them.
Right.
And then as I entered the picture, I was the second child of the family, middle child out of 3. Life seemed to be good, for where we were at. But when I was recognizing as I was getting older and I was able to be a little bit more attuned to the world, my grandfather passing on my mom's side, then on my dad's side, and watching how that adversity affected them. And then about a year after my grandfather passed on my dad's side, my dad had a stroke and lost his speech and a lot of his brain function, and some of his physical function too. And how that absence created, just like the adversity of absence created such a vacuum effect in my life, and how that then affected me, and how that was compounded by the fact that I had just left homeschooling in like my early youth years to enter middle school at like a semi-private Christian school.
Right.
That recruited for basketball, and so a lot of the bigger athletes found me to be favorable as a target, right? And so learning how to adapt to peer pressure when you were once in an environment where you were the only one who needed to matter, as well as learning how to fight and defend yourself.
Yeah.
From dudes whose hands teleported. Like, what?
Absolutely.
And going through that, and going through the adversity of peer pressure, going through the adversity of recognizing that your identity doesn't come from what other people think of you, and going then through the adversity of preparing yourself for college and understanding the concept of personal responsibility, and looking through all of that, the adversity of heartbreak, the adversity of depression, of addiction, of all those different things. When you're in it, it seems almost impossible to see God.
Right.
It reminds me of I think it's in Psalm 42, or maybe a different psalm where I believe the psalmist, I'm not sure if it's David, is saying, like, pray to God while there's still a chance that he may be found. For how can you hear him over the roaring of many waters?
Yeah.
Right? It's like things are so loud and so deafening, we can't see him in the adversity. But when we look back, we see this intricate quilt, this tapestry of art. Like one of my favorite images of post-adversity is kintsugi, right? Which is the Japanese art where they take a broken bowl and they fill all the cracks with gold. And they bond it together. And it's more beautiful broken than it ever was whole.
Yeah.
And so I think in order to look holistically at adversity, we have to look at it in a couple different stages. We have to look at it in the stage where we're in the middle of it. We can't see anything. And how does that look? How can we think in that process? We have to look at it in the recovery stage, where we're just trying to get over it. We've just passed through it. Then what? Do we just drop our guard and go AWOL doing the things we finally get to do? Or do we recognize this is a chance of true healing? And then we look at the peripheral stage, looking in hindsight and gleaning the lessons that we've learned once we've recovered emotionally, physically, mentally from that trauma. So I think we could probably start with those three and pick one.
Yeah, for sure. Let's break them down. I love doing that. I love digging deep into these topics and kind of just like being a what's the term?
What do you got? Let's see.
Like
you got this.
A spelunker.
Yeah, a spelunker. That's I've never heard that one.
Bro, they're like adventurers that go into caves and stuff. It's pretty dope. Shout out to Spelunky the game. It's pretty dope.
Heck yeah.
But yeah, let's dig deep and spelunk in these
for sure.
these topics here. So number one, you were talking about what it looks like when we're in the thick of it, right? That is the scariest time, because for me, at least in my personal experience, it feels like a deep, dark fog around you. Like I don't know, like setting up a campfire and the smoke gets blown in your face. I was just camping this weekend, which is why
there you go.
That's fresh in my mind.
Speaking of camping, in Florida, there is a certified dark sky camp spot in Kissimmee, which is just around Disney World. So kind of the Orlando area, but a little bit south. And it's just this beautiful place where it's apparently like by the Dark Sky Association of America, you can see all of the stars. Like that's there's awesome. Like no light pollution there. And so you can like rent a campsite for a weekend or like for a night and just look at the stars on a clear night. And since we have that classic 2-week Florida winter coming up where we get like sporadically 2 weeks worth of cold days between December and like March.
Right.
Second semester, camping spots. Maybe that's a good plan.
Heck yeah. What's it called again for the peeps at home?
I just Googled Dark Sky Camping Spot, Florida.
All right. Dark Sky Camping Spot, Florida. Hit up Google, hit up Bing, hit up DuckDuckGo if that's what you're doing.
That's where you at. That's where you at. Dogpile.com.
Yeah, that's any search engine.
MSN, Yahoo.
Shout out to all the Yahoo heads, bro.
Purple gang.
Purple gang. Anyway, I don't want to get off topic. This is what happens when Gabriel and I talk, by the way. But just to reel us back in here, talking about the smog of adversity.
Right.
It's a very scary thing because you're so uncertain of the future and maybe even of the past. Maybe you don't even know how you got to where you are now.
Right.
All you remember is in that moment now, in this place that we are now, I am surrounded by adversity. I'm stressed. I'm tired. I'm emotionally unstable. I don't know what's going on. I don't know if there's anyone that I can talk to, this, that, and the next. I feel alone. I feel just stuck, scared. And a good analogy that I like to use, I love to use analogies because I'm a very visual thinker. So I like to kind of put these into things that you can kind of see, is just the giant in the woods analogy, right? I'm not sure if I don't know if I'm the first one to come up with that. Probably not.
Hey, you never know. There could be some originality left in this world.
Probably not. Anyway, it begins with you, the person, of course, in this deep dark wood, right? You don't know what's left, right, front, back. It's just dark wood, right? But there's this giant that's with you, right? And of course, that giant is God. You can see his feet and you can see where he's walking, but you don't know what's going on, right? But he does, because he's over the trees and he can see everything and he knows the plan. He made the plan. It's just I don't know, Tuesday to him, right? This is nothing to God.
Hakuna Matata.
Hakuna Matata. It's really no worries for him. But for us, it's like, oh my gosh, like, well, what was that? It's dark. I don't know anything.
Right.
And we start to freak out. But in those moments, if you haven't found God yet, or rather you don't really know where to look for God, just don't worry, because he'll find you in those moments. He found me in that moment. It took me getting to my lowest of lows for God to then reveal himself to me and just say like, all right, bud, let's turn ourselves around here. We got some work to do.
Yeah.
And in that moment, it was my choice to either slap his hand away or take it. And you bet your bippy I took that hand. Because honestly, there was probably not a second chance for me.
Right.
I think. I feel like there was definitely not a second chance for me in that moment. So, anyway, giant in the woods. Just make sure you stay close to God in the face of that when there's uncertainty.
Yeah.
What's our second point here? Because I forgot.
I want to riff on the first one a little bit more. So
snap.
I like this. So
Absolutely.
With the uncertainty of being in adversity, yes, it can be scary, right? But different people handle conflict different ways, right? So you have some people, they see a conflict and they're like, let's take this by the horns.
Absolutely.
I'm going to physically rip this bull like off of its feet and like I'm the bull now, right?
Yeah.
And you have other people who are like, conflict, please no, no. I'll do anything, please. Just like take my wallet, take my phone, like no matter what, just don't bother my peace. Right? Then you have people who like they fight for what's right, but to defend themselves, they just do nothing.
Right.
Right? Because either they're shameful about themselves, they believe lies that their opinions don't matter, or they think that if they just focus on everybody else, then they will get love in return and it doesn't come back and they get resentful.
Yeah.
And so finding ourselves in the midst of conflict, one of the best things we can do is begin the process by kind of skipping to that third point of reflecting, how did we get here? Right? One of the analogies that I kind of think of, and it's obviously out of context, but is Avatar: The Last Airbender. Right?
Oh, yeah.
So your boy's on an Appa. He's flying through the skies.
Absolutely.
He's running away from his problems. I know that one very well, right?
As
He
do
enters
I.
into a massive storm of life and begins to drown. And the wiser elements within him freeze. They stop. They preserve him. The wisdom inside of him says, hold on. Let's figure this out.
Right.
Right? Now, generally speaking, obviously it's out of context because he's frozen in a block of ice and then it's 100 years later he gets let out all in due time, because the whole point of that show is destiny and self-actualization. But in that pause of being in the storm and freezing, that recognition of I need to stop, and recognizing that you have both the right, the ability, and the capacity to do so.
Yeah.
Is so important, right? One of I was reading this book, 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson. The first rule: stand up straight with your shoulders back. And he goes into the whole thing about dominance hierarchies with lobsters. It's the funniest thing. I love it. But as a psychologist, he's like going at it and breaking down how we as humans also enter into hierarchies involuntarily or voluntarily, based on, whether it's strength or whether it's, the influence or whether it's the capacity to endure. Whatever it is, we enter into these hierarchies because hierarchies generally benefit our society. We can then assess and make judgments and choose what is better for us. And so one of the purposes of standing up straight and putting your shoulders back is that by choosing to put your body into a position where you are less defensive, where you're less curtailed inward, which is the natural response to chaos when we don't know what we're doing.
Absolutely.
Right? In doing that, in choosing, saying, no, I will take on this responsibility, it's almost as if your brain then switches gears. It's like, okay, I don't need to worry about what's going to come next. This is not a massive storm. The storm transitions into adventure.
Yeah.
Right? Instead of it being chaos where you get drowned underneath, you begin to look at it like you're windsurfing. Right? That same storm now becomes like a challenge.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of it was kind of also precedent in another episode of that show where Aang has to go fly into the storm to save Sokka and that fisherman.
Yeah.
Right? I think it's like episode 12 or whatever. But recognizing that it's okay to pause, to stop, to freeze, to gain your bearings, to access the inner wisdom that's inside of you, that's placed there by the Holy Spirit, right? If you're a believer, if you're not, then to pause and to ask for wisdom from those around you that is acceptable, that is necessary, and that is most helpful, right? And so to take that freeze in the middle of adversity, to gain your bearings and recognize that life doesn't always work your way, and it's an adventure. An adventure is something that is unforeseen, but that can also be enjoyable because it leads to discovery, right? Recognize that also kind of going into this that, or even in the midst of it, there are lessons to be learned. You don't know them now. You don't know fully about yourself in this moment, how you're responding. Maybe you see traits that you don't like, bad habits that you're forming, coping mechanisms, addictions, whether it's a negative relationship, whether it's pornography, whatever it is. Maybe you begin to see yourself lying more or resisting going out because you're introverting, not in a healthy space, not in a space of rest, but in panic and in fear, right? And so recognizing there are lessons to be learned, that you need to pause, and that you can face this, that you have what it takes, that there are generations of people who have gone before you, who have endured so much, and their genomes, their genes, their blood flows through you. Recognizing that and like allowing that wisdom to enter you changes the game.
Absolutely.
Right? And it leads you onto one of two paths. If you don't do that, you then have a longer second period, that recovery period. But if you do it, that recovery period shortens exponentially, and you begin into the introspective and the reflective stage where you then begin to actually learn the lessons that the Lord is teaching you. And that's one of the biggest things, right? And part of that, as you freeze and recognizing all those different things, recognizing again, the wisdom of the Holy Spirit inside of you, that you can pause, recognizing that you can handle adversity, recognizing that it's okay to ask for help and to get your bearings, and that there are lessons to be learned, right? In the lessons to be learned, you can find comfort that Jesus is working out your faith. He is the author and the finisher. And so reminding yourself of those things is so important in life's storms.
Yeah.
And oftentimes what happens is when we're young, we don't know these things. We don't know how to go through adversity. We don't have the capability for endurance. And so in the ingenious way that the Lord designed us, we rely on the instincts that we observe from our surroundings, or that we've ascertained from our surroundings, or that we have inbred into us from our past, right? And those become our coping mechanisms and inform and turn into our personalities. And so it's fascinating to go back to those times of adversity in journaling or in deep thought and memory and ascertain what the lessons you were supposed to learn were versus what the lessons you did learn were. And looking at the lies the enemy taught you that have affected you up until now, and looking at the truths that the Lord wanted to instill in you through the choices of either yourself or others and the negative consequences that came about because of those.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, the Bible itself, in so many places, you can see God calling us to never fear the things of the world. Because I don't know if you know or not, but God's a little bit bigger than the world.
God is bigger than the boogeyman.
Absolutely. He can kick the boogeyman's butt, y'all. And check this out. With his help, we can too. I know it sounds so corny, like, oh, I can kick the boogeyman's butt. Like, we each have our own specific adversity, right? Like, for example, anxiety, right? We're in school now at PBA, and we've got classes, we've got exams, we've got papers, we've got assessments, we've got exegesis, we've got...
I remember those days.
Yeah, right? I don't have to
Mr. Gladwin, I repent. I'm so glad I'm done with his class.
Shout out to Mr. Gladwin.
Shout out. Theology and Ethics of Ministry.
So many
40 pagers.
Oh my gosh. That's awesome. Yeah, but like everyone's got their thing, right? Whether it be school or personal things like addiction or anxiety, depression. Some of us are struggling with fruits of the Spirit, like love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, or self-control.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, right. I remember. Shout out to Children's Church.
Hey, Sunday school.
Sunday school. But what I'm saying is we each got our thing, right?
Right.
And for some of us, those things beat us down hard. I'll use myself as an example, just so that we can relate here. I struggle with anxiety hard, y'all. I do. There are times where I freak out so much that I freeze and shut down. It's pretty bad.
Yeah.
I struggle with really, really sad dips as well. Like, I'm not going to throw out the depression word because I haven't been clinically diagnosed as depressed, but when I get sad, it's pretty bad in that moment. And as an introvert, that doesn't help at all as well, because like when you're supposed to be alone, that's your recharge time. But there are times where when I'm alone, I'm not recharging, my battery's draining even more, and there's so much other stuff swirling around in my head and things like that. But what I want to kind of emphasize here is that I let that control my life. I let my own self I let my own head like take over, I guess you can say, right? I got into my own head way too often on a lot of things, and those things didn't matter. And because I was so caught up on them, I wasn't even able to focus on real life, let alone the Father, which is really bad and just like a waste of time, quite frankly. It's good to understand that if you latch on to God, He'll bring you through anything.
Yeah.
Like anything. It's kind of wild what God will do if you just put just a mustard seed's worth of faith into Him.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes you don't even have to verbally ask, right? You can just say a quick prayer in your head, like, God help. You don't even have to say what for, right? Just, God help. And in that moment, God's like, all right, bet. All you have to do is ask. And then He's there.
Yeah.
Because that's just the kind of God that He is.
It's incredible, like, in that.
Yeah.
Oh, this is so good. So I love like, I try to look at different perspectives, right?
Yeah.
And so I recognize that right now, like I was talking about all these different like thought processes, like in the middle of adversity from like a more aggressive stance, right? That's one way to look at it. But a lot of people I've recognized in my life, and myself, I was like this way. We like to revel in our pain, or at least take the time to allow ourselves and or others to understand it. And one of my favorite things I want to emphasize in Scripture is, I believe in Hebrews, where Peter's, and I think also in Paul talks about this, where Jesus knows every temptation we have had, and He will never give us more than we are able to handle. Then there is a way of escape, right? He empathizes with us. And there is a space in that pause for you that where even before you get beyond the temptation to the struggle or the adversity to find your balance, even if you never get the balance, there is so much grace in the eyes of Jesus, in the smile, the little twinkle of like His like smirk look at you, where it's like, hey dude, I get it. I see your pain. I know the struggle and the thoughts racing through your mind, and I'm here to sit with you. I remember like this cartoon, Justice League Unlimited, and there was this one where this superpowered girl who could like control reality was going to destroy all the dimensions, whatever, classic superhero stuff.
Yeah, of course.
And they can't seem to defeat her, and so like Batman just walks into her reality that she's created, and he has the tools to kill her, but she can read minds, and she like, you're not going to try to use that thing on me, are you? He's like, no. She's like, I'm dying.
I remember that scene.
Yeah.
They're sitting on the swing sets.
And he sits on the swing with her.
Yep.
And he's like, I know. And she's like, you're going to sit here with me, aren't you? And he's like, I am. Bro, that wrecked me.
Yeah, I think I cried at that moment.
No, I wept, dude.
Yeah, shout out to DC. Keep making animated movies.
Yes.
Stop making real life movies. Leave that to Marvel. Thank you. And Marvel, don't make animated movies.
Hey, so they got some decent ones.
No.
Bro,
No.
come on. Avengers Assemble was incredible.
No.
Or no, not Avengers Assemble. Sorry, Earth's Mightiest Heroes. That's what it was. Back in 2008, that show was the bomb, bro. That show introduced me to Black Panther long before the movies ever came out, and I fell in love with that character, bro. That show had like an articulate storyline. It brought in all the different like anti-heroes,
Right.
like the way they were meant to be in the comics. You should check it out.
Yeah.
It's a solid show.
I still think it's trash.
Well, you know what? You gonna when you watch it.
No, I do like the Spider-Man ones though. Spider-Man doesn't miss ever. So
Heck yeah.
shout out to Miles Morales.
Heck yeah.
Absolutely.
Let's go. New Spider-Man game. Shout out to PS5.
Shout out to PS5.
Sony.
Xbox, please keep watching. Thank you. Yeah, but
riffing again on the grace in recognizing that it's okay to pause, assess your situation, and recognize like I need compassion.
yeah.
Like I need to cry. It's okay to cry. Like just recently, I'm not going to get into all the details of work, but there's a whole situation in my. I work with a family business. It's my family.
Yes.
And I'm the director of operations by default. I love my family. I'm not going to get into all the details, but there's a significant change happening where one of the upper management is leaving and taking something that I was really looking forward to working on with him. And so it's kind of left some bittersweet emotions there. And I have this capacity to forget like my anger and to forget my adversity and to fall asleep to it and like just go back to the zen and just be like, everything's fine. And I'm like the dog in the flame house.
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
everything's fine. I just close my eyes. I'm like the pyro from Team Fortress. I just see sunshine and rainbows and it's all really flames. Yeah. And so looking at that, I recognize like I need to process this because there was some passive aggressive anger starting to come out. Yeah. And so I just sat down in a parking lot with Jesus and I just broke. Like I just wept. And I was like, God, I am so tired. And I was looking forward to this so much. And it's gone. And this hurts. And I don't know where to go from here. And just in the middle of the storm, trying to learn all of his stuff because I have to take it over. Trying to figure out all of the problems and the pain and where all the stress is coming from and all this exhaustion that I'm dealing with. Just stopping and breaking down before the Lord. And just hearing, it's okay. No. I'm here. Don't worry. And having that grace. It's that grace, right? Grace is empowerment. Grace is strength. Grace is love.
Yeah.
Grace is patience. And it's in that brokenness where we accept it. Where we accept the pain. That we can then move forward through it. I once heard this gentleman say, I forgot his name. Oftentimes we try to find peace by avoiding conflict. But it is only oftentimes through conflict that we can get to true peace. And so in that adversity, don't be afraid to pause, to be honest with yourself, to either recognize like, okay, I'm not perfect. I can't be perfect. Or I'm not strong enough to take this on. Or maybe people don't fully understand me. Or I genuinely don't know what I want to do. And just accept the pain of your adversity before moving forward through it.
Absolutely. And might I add,
go for it.
When you do move forward, when you do lean into this specific adversity, you're not alone in it. I'm sure that's probably like given, right? It's kind of built in for us Christians. But with God, you can lean into anything, and leaning in and moving through isn't unhealthy at all. And as a matter of fact, you don't have to do it immediately. Yeah. Like Gabe just said, like you're free to take a moment to rest and reflect and just kind of think before you begin moving. But ultimately we do have to move in and move through our adversities.
And move intentionally.
Absolutely.
That's the hardest thing to do sometimes.
Yeah, like moving with purpose that I'm going to get through this. Moving
Right.
believing that you're going to get through this. Because you can move through it half-heartedly and it won't do anything.
Right.
You can move through it like, whatever happens. You will hit that wall and that'll mess up your entire morale and probably like mess you up even more. You need to fully 100% be ready and willing and able and all for diving into this unknown with God with the intent to just demolish whatever giant or whatever wall you have in front of you.
Yeah.
And every single time it's possible. Every single time.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not sure if y'all didn't know or not, but like, God doesn't miss. Ever.
Say it again.
Yo, God doesn't,
Bring it home.
God doesn't miss ever. Like, you guys at home, like, really, if you think like, surely there was one time, like, come on, really? Think about it right now. I'll give you some time.
I can hear the Arminius. They're like, but free will. But he still don't miss.
That was us, by the way. That was free will is us. That was our fault.
Exactly.
And everything that we mess up in the world, war and like adversity and what the whole killing and messing up stuff and
he still doesn't miss.
That's us. That's our fault. We screwed up. You know why? Because we as humans are inherently sinful and evil. But that's not God. And I'll tell you where God doesn't miss in that. He's still there with us.
Right.
In all of that. Despite our cesspool of sin that is this world.
And the choices that erect from it.
And the choices that erect from it and continue to erect from it, might I say. It's not going to end.
Right.
God's still here like, yeah, well, they're quirky. But they're mine. And I love them.
And I'll be patient for him.
Absolutely. And I'll be here when they're ready. Take your time. I'm chilling.
And I love how he works out all things for good.
Absolutely.
Dude, when I was in middle school and I got my personality shattered, right? And in my home life, my family adversity between my grandparents passing and my dad's stroke, and to where all the focus was then put onto my father as he's recovering. And I'm a middle child, so I already feel my voice isn't heard enough. And in school, everybody can't stand me. And so I try to become a chameleon to adapt to whoever is around me, right? That coping mechanism, that brokenness, that shattered personality, the Lord came in and said, I'm going to use you to minister to all kinds of people. You are going to become all things to all people in me. And so even in the brokenness, even in people chasing me around after school with belts and beating me up outside behind the gym, even with like getting tag teamed by 3 or 4 people while 2 dudes are holding me back, like in place to get hit.
Yes.
Like even when all of that happened and I shattered into a million pieces and couldn't find a single shred of who I once was, Jesus is like, I'm using this. Don't you worry. This
Absolutely.
is not a mistake that is irreversible. And this is not a flaw that will make you unusable.
Absolutely. And let me just do a little side thing here, because I feel like this is important to say. If it probably isn't likely because we're in high school. We're in college, right? We're adults.
We finally made it through high school.
Yeah, right. We made it through high school. If you know that bully, or you are that bully, love them and try to love yourself.
Yeah.
Because I promise you, those that hurt other people are hurting just as much as the people that they hurt. They're going through their own adversity and they need help. All right, so
Yeah.
it might be really difficult, but be that light to them.
Dude, yes. One of the most powerful things I ever experienced was walking into the Wellington Mall back when Zen Garden was still a thing. And I'm chilling in the store and I'm looking at some like cool like knives or whatever. And I see one of those bullies walking in. His name was Brandon.
Shout out to Brandon.
Shout out to Brandon. Back in 6th grade, he was like already like 5'8", and I was like 4'5" because I had skipped a year going before 6th.
Right.
And so I'm like getting all the flashbacks, but now I'm a 3rd degree black belt. I know about like pressure point stuff. I can make this look like an accident. I have like 15 knives around me, you know, like let's go right now. But there's this peace that washed over me because I had been through inner healing with the Lord.
Right.
And so I walked up to him. I was like, "Hey, bro, how are you?" And he's like, "Gabe?" I was like, nobody recognized me with a beard from school.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Yeah, dude, how's it going? Like, how's life? Talk to me. What's going on? Are you in college?" He's like, "Nah, you know, he's just talking to me about colleges for chumps, and he's working a construction job." And I'm like, "Wow, dude, nice. I'm glad you're making money. Like, good for you." And the Lord just told me, like, "Tell him you forgive him." And I was like, well, like, I kind of like froze up in the second. I'm like, dialogue bubble, like layer smile, right? Like, and I was like, what? And he's like, "Tell him you forgive him." I was like, that's so awkward, Lord. Like, we're in the middle of catching up. He's like, "Tell him you forgive him." I was like, okay, fine. So I was like, "You know what, bro? I just want you to know I forgive you." He's like, "For what?" I was like, "Don't worry about it." And I gave him a hug. And dude, there have been many times in my life where I felt a near physical feeling of chains falling off of me on my wrists. This one was around my neck.
Yikes.
Dude, I felt it was just like chink, and it just fell off. And I lost about 20 pounds right then and there. It was incredible. Learning to make peace with the source of your adversity is exponentially necessary.
Yeah.
But that leads us, and I want to make sure we hit those other 2 points, because we can riff on being in adversity all day.
Yeah, these episodes don't have like set times for...
Oh, really?
Yeah, we can
go full Joe Rogan?
Oh, yeah, we can just talk.
Oh, heck yeah. Let's go.
Shout out to Joe Rogan.
Shout out. I swear we're coming for you. I won't smoke, but I'll totally be on Joe Rogan's podcast.
Oh, yeah, we don't, yeah. Still a Christian podcast.
Hey, I'd love to talk fighting with it. That'd be so cool.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
As would I.
So that leads to the second thing, which is the aftermath.
Yeah.
Sometimes the eye of the storm, depending on if you have another adversity, but the aftermath, right? The day after the hurricane, the tornado hits and you're looking at the shambles of your house, right? That aftermath can be one of the most pivotal moments because it is oftentimes in the tail end of that adversity and that aftermath where you are beginning to decompress, where you are most malleable, right? And so looking at this, it's also one of the most dangerous times for your soul.
Yeah.
You see, oftentimes those compulsive ideas and coping mechanisms that we created and fell rhythmically into during the adversity can be set in stone in the aftermath, because then we can continue those habits, but the adversity is no longer there, so it becomes our default coping mechanism. An example of this would be that there were many people in the Vietnam War who would smoke crack, or they would regularly smoke marijuana, but they wouldn't get addicted when they came home because they recognized that those coping mechanisms were taking place in a war zone, and when they were at home, they made the conscious choice to choose against the coping mechanism, and there was far less adverse results, right? Versus other people who came back and continued that action after the adversity ceased, and they then fell into a life of despair because now the coping mechanism turned into an addiction, right? And so in that, like a warning that I see is like with King David, right? In the time when he was supposed to go off to war, right? He had probably gone to war so many times. Every year in the spring, the kings go to war. He's tired of the adversity. He's tired of the chaos. He's tired of all those things. So he's quitting. He's like, man, I'm taking a day off. And it is in that moment, in that dropping of the guard, where he proverbially like steps on a piece of debris that gets stuck in his foot. He sees Bathsheba and he is done for. When he has dropped his guard, he's let go of his personal responsibility towards himself, towards his nation, and ultimately towards God.
Yeah.
Right? And I remember this clearly because there are, of course, waves, right? When I was in adversity, being bullied, I fell into a pornography addiction. And when I came out of it, I could have chosen to stop. Or so I thought. It probably set in far too much at that point.
Right.
But it was past that addiction began to do serious damage to who I was. because now it was no longer a justifiable coping mechanism. The coping mechanism expanded its horizons from the major adversity to the minor adversities.
Yeah.
And it became all-consuming. And I needed an entire revamp of my life to unplug from that. And so the caution that I want to share is, in that time frame, make the conscious choice to continue to seek your personal responsibility in your recovery, to continue to seek the hand of God through the adversity and the lessons you want to learn, and to transition into the reflective stage. Because if we are aimless, we can often drift after the storm to islands where many dangers wait for us.
Yeah.
And so that second stage is important to not stay there for too long.
Absolutely.
But it is a stage that happens. There's
Yeah.
times where, like, you celebrate the victory of the big game and the adversity, and you pop off champagne and you go crazy afterwards. But if
Yeah.
you do that for the next year, you're not going to win the next championship.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is such facts for sure. Yeah. Because in that kind of I'm going to call it restful compliancy. You can develop a spirit of sloth.
Yes.
That makes you susceptible to a lot of things, right? Like,
You succumb to inertia.
yeah, and you kind of fall into the things that kind of pseudo kept you afloat, like pornography and drugs and maybe drinking and
A bad relationship.
toxic relationships. And as someone who has been through most of that stuff, and thank the Lord I'm free from it all.
Yeah. Amen.
Yeah, not the alcohol stuff. That's disgusting.
I can't get myself past 2 drinks.
Yeah,
I can't. Like, I mean, I'm 24 legally.
And I'm
allowed.
21. Let
Yes,
the
we
record
are-
show we are of age to drink.
We are PBA appropriate.
Yes, yes. The Bible is right here.
I have my Bible on my phone.
Yes. But
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's something about losing self-control. I just don't like it.
yeah,
I don't like losing self-control. I'm already so conscious about being in control because that's a coping mechanism I'm trying to work out of. And it's
Absolutely.
mostly not being in control of others, but being in control of myself.
yeah.
Right? I'm easy go with the flow, but if I can maintain the easy go with the flow, then peace will be around me, or so the lie goes.
Yes, I'm the same way. I'm a very flexible person, right? But I take great pride in my structure when it comes to having to actually have that structure when it comes to important
Right.
things, right? When I can rest, I can rest. But when it's time to go, it's time to go.
Right. And it's in that dangerous place because we can begin to compromise, right? Or we already do compromise oftentimes in the adversity, but then we compromise in the recovery after the adversity.
Yeah.
And then we succumb to the negative inertia of those selfish traits that oftentimes lead to inner resentment of ourselves or from ourselves towards others.
Right.
That then leads to toxic habits, that then leads to dangerous ideologies, that leads to depression, anger, and the manifestations of that resentment unchecked.
It's kind of like when you're in that rest period, you're vulnerable to fall back into what you just tried so hard to dig yourself out of in the first place.
And this, I want to make this the transition into the third section,
Absolutely.
right? So that resentment is actually a gift.
Yeah.
Your resentment is a gift. You see, what your resentment tells you is one of 2 things. Either you are being taken advantage of, that something is attacking you, hurting you, pressuring you unfairly, or you need to grow up and take on the responsibility. That you need to, again, stick your head up, shoulders back, and get ready for battle. Assert yourself in your place.
Yeah.
Even if this assertion is simply choosing the restaurant where you want to go to, right? This isn't just like, I'm going to go around campus and I'm going to let everyone know I am the best. Like,
Right.
no, this is you taking the time to be like, wow, I'm hurting. Let me figure out what I actually like.
Yeah.
And then protecting it. Like, I like this. So I'm going to make sure that when those 3 people all ask me to say, like, hey, can you help me with this? Can you help me with this? Can you help me with this? That I actually be like, before I say yes, let me think about it for a second. Do I
Yeah.
genuinely want to do this?
Absolutely.
Do I have the time to do this? Yes or no? Okay, if it's a no and you're like still wanting to do it, Lord, should I do this? right? And then choosing to move forward when you have committed, as opposed to just being swung around by the winds of whatever is happening.
Absolutely.
And it's good to go with the flow at times.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But it's so necessary to be assertive, to at least make your thoughts known, to at least to yourself, so you can choose whether you want to act on them or not.
Yeah.
And in doing so in love, right? Not to bulldoze somebody, not to just be stubborn and be like, no, I like what I like to do, so goodbye.
Right.
Like there's of course balance, right? But in that gift of resentment, let's say you're in that place where you begin to enter in those coping mechanisms and you do not like what you're doing. That not liking feeling, that feeling of angst or of uncomfortableness when you're being taken advantage of, when the adversity is something that you can control, but you're allowing yourself to be controlled by it, and that feeling of frustration, of pent up, just again angst. Are we good on the cameras?
Yes, we are.
Solid. No, you're good.
Yeah.
I've already done the camera sin multiple times. I've like looked at the camera to like check it. I'm like,
Oh yeah.
But it's a podcast, so it happens.
Oh yeah, it's a video podcast,
Ooh,
so it happens.
Hey.
Fancy.
So like in that space, that gift of resentment can help you transition to the third stage, which is the reflection and the lesson learning.
Yeah.
Right? It's kind of the hope is that when we're in the middle of adversity, we can pause. We can gather our focus, trust the Lord, reach out for help, break before Him in a safe space as best as one we can find or create in our hearts, right? And just be genuine before Him, but take a moment to center and to focus and recognize that our circumstances do not make or break who we are or what our heart is. Right? Our circumstances don't control our lives and our identity. And so when we can get that reality in check and recognize that this is reality, then we can prayerfully skip that rest phase of shock to a degree and transition to, okay, Lord, what is the lesson you want me to learn from this? Yes. Instead of, God, please end this. Lord, what is the lesson you want me to learn from this?
Yeah.
You're teaching me patience. You're teaching me love of who you made me to be just as much as my neighbor. Absolutely. You're teaching me respect for your creation in honoring the body temple you gave me, as well as not recklessly harming somebody else, right? You're teaching me strength and fearlessness. When the Lord told me to get a motorcycle, I was scared out of my mind. I've lived in Florida all my life. I know how bad these drivers are. Right. I was like, I'm never going to get a bike. And the Lord's like, get a bike. I'm like, but God, it's so dangerous. He's like, I am with you. You will not die. Absolutely. You will not get hurt. Buddy, I even went down at 50 miles an hour on the turnpike, slid out in the middle of a corner because of an oil slick, all right? Yeah. I'm fairly certain it was an oil slick. And I got a tiny scratch on my elbow. That was it. That was it. And well, what? My bike's flipping. There's parts in the air. I'm tumbling, right? 50 miles an hour crash. The Lord is with me. I'm fine.
Yeah.
And He's like, get back up on the bike. Don't let fear get to you. Don't quit. Right? And to get you wrong, I'm not like some macho dude. I'm not like an aggressor who's like, yeah, let's fight. I'm conflict averse. Right. Okay. And the Lord is like, enter into conflict, my son. And I'm like, but Jesus. He's like, do it, boy. This is how the inner dialogue works sometimes. Absolutely. And so in that reflective stage, journaling is a massive tool. Massive tool. I mean, when you can take the time to type out, just even, you don't have to think of journaling as like, Lord, this is what I learned from you today. No, you can just be like, this day was absolute horse manure. And this is what happened, and I am livid. I am angry. Bleep, 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 bleep. Because the Lord sees your heart, all right? Like, He's not surprised by the fact that you're cursing in your head, okay? Yeah. So in that, obviously, we guard our mouths because we do not want to curse against God. We do not want to dishonor him, but we can share our frustrations in genuine honesty to him, right? And so, just laying it out there. And half the time you lay it out, you read a little bit of it, and the Lord's already opening your eyes, just like, boom, boom, red flag, highlight. Here's a time where you can recognize that later in the future. Wow, look at this time where you actually showed patience better than you expected. Right. Oh my goodness, look at that. Like in the nick of time, the Lord gave you that thought that allowed you to remember the test exam question, right? Yeah. And like all those different things, just to begin to put it into perspective. And I personally prefer written journaling because blue screens kind of activate that impulsive part of the brain, right? The limbic system. Right. And when you're always, our phones do it too. When we're always growing the impulsive part of our brains, we are allowing the more reflective part, the more conscious choice and logical thinking part to atrophy. And so we become more impulsive by nature, and we find ourselves in more adversity as a result oftentimes. And so I prefer to take that time to detox and write down in a piece of paper. I have like lots of different journal books, what happened. And I also make sure I have a section for like the good of the day.
Yes.
Like you have to, because I can get so lost in the negative, dude. I can go full on grayscale. Edgar Allan Poe, eat your heart out. Right? But if I have that section for the good, even if the only thing good was, well, the bathroom smelled nice at Chili's. Like,
shout out to Chili's.
Hi, welcome to Chili's.
Hi, welcome to Chili's.
Like, even if that's the only nice thing, oftentimes by remembering that one nice thing, I begin to remember another.
Absolutely.
And then another, and I begin to be thankful. And that begins to counterbalance the negative of the day.
Yeah.
And it's so helpful. And that counterbalance, that symbiosis, right? That yin and yang, so to speak, allows us to have a more equal perspective, a more balanced approach as we begin to look at the lessons the Lord is teaching us.
Absolutely. And I kind of want to break this entire thing down even further, or kind of generalize it into two very simple things, right? Yeah. When it comes to tackling adversity head on and absolutely conquering it, because that's the point of this conversation, right? How do we conquer adversity with the Lord Jesus? And it begins with first knowing exactly who you're dealing with here when it comes to the Father, right? Yeah. You need to know God. You need to know your God. So I was doing some digging in the Bible. I was doing some searching and some reading as you do, and I came across Psalm 46, right? For those that have their Bibles, go ahead and flip over to Psalm 46.
Let me turn on my lightsaber real quick.
Very cool. And it says, well, first off, it starts out the header is God is our fortress. So you already know it's gonna be a banger.
Send it.
Absolutely. So it begins in verse 1 saying, God is our refuge and our strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore he will not fear, though the earth gives way, though the mountains be moved into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, though the mountains tremble at its swelling. Salah. Salah. There is a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy habitation of the Most High. God is in the midst of her. She shall not be moved. God will help her when morning dawns. The nations rage, the kingdoms totter. He utters his voice, the earth melts. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. Come behold the works of the Lord, how he has brought desolations on the earth. He makes wars cease to the end of the earth. Let that one marinate for a second.
Hallelujah.
He makes wars cease to the end of the earth. He breaks the bow and shatters the spear. He burns the chariots with fire. And then the last one, y'all know this one. Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress.
That is just incredible.
Absolutely. Like, no words. It's just good. And on top of that, it's true.
Yeah.
Like it sounds great, right? But like, just know that it's real. Like, God mends the hearts of man and ceases just to a halt all types of war, all types of strife, all types of division. I know we've been hearing that word a lot. Shout out to the P word that we're not gonna talk about because PBA.
Hey.
Shout out to PBA. But that's our God. Yo.
Yeah.
That's the one that we serve. That's the one that walks with us every day in everything we do.
Right.
And through the highs and the lows, that's this God here.
Yeah.
This is him. And I'm just saying this to say to y'all that are watching at home, and even to you, Gabriel, and to myself as well. Like, this is for everyone.
Yeah.
Unless you're God himself, I'd say. Just be still and know that he is God.
Yeah.
He's God, right? Not the president, not
Keep it going. Yes.
the prime minister for our European boys. Not I don't know.
Dude, I just want to riff on that.
Yeah.
Like listen, like I'm just thinking back to Isaiah, right?
Yeah.
He holds the sphere of the earth in his hand.
Yeah.
This is the God who spoke the universe into existence. He said, light. Let there be light, and it was.
Yeah.
He calmed the chaos of the waters. He knows the micro universe, right? The microverse to such a degree that he can read every atomic movement. But at the same time, the cosmos is but his footstool. Right? He is so vast, so grand, so powerful. With a thought, he engineered mountains. With a touch of his finger, he carved out the Grand Canyon.
Yeah.
And this God is our Father. In Jesus Christ, this God is our Dad. This God gifts us the gifts of the kingdom, right? Jesus said, it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the gifts of the kingdom, the peace of holiness of the Holy Spirit. And if we had faith like a mustard seed, we can move a mountain into the sea by simply speaking to it.
Yeah.
When we recognize this victorious stock is what we are drawn from. When we recognize our ancestry, spiritually speaking, now traces back to the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, the creator of the universe, the ultimate victor, the warrior of warriors, right? Jeremiah says that he is with me like a dread warrior. Exodus, the Lord literally says, the Lord is a warrior, the Lord is his name. Yeah. Right? That when you recognize this is your dad, this is where you come from, this is where your characteristics come from, and this is who you are, you stand up straight with your shoulders back and you get ready to go.
Absolutely.
And it leads to another thing. I'm going to start riffing off. I have a list here of the 12 rules for life from that book.
Yeah, go for it.
So when you recognize that, you have a confidence. You have a hope.
Yes.
Right? You change your posture. It changes. Your perspective begins to change. And one of the things you must then do is know more of yourself. And in part of knowing yourself, you must know what's better for yourself. You do. But oftentimes we don't look at ourselves as if we know what's best for ourselves. We look at ourselves as if we deserve the worst. Somebody else deserves better. At least most of the time. right? Maybe sometimes we get a little Parks and Rec, treat yourself, a little bit of Batman cosplay, crying, I've never felt this way.
Shout out to Aziz Ansari.
Hey.
He's going to be on the show next.
Hey, that's what's up. Let's go. Right? But one of the things we don't do is treat ourselves like we are responsible for taking care of ourselves, right? How is it that we feed our pets their medicine on time and their food on time, and we take them to the doctors on time, but we skip our own doctor's visits, our own dental appointments, we skip our own medicine things, we don't even finish the packet of antibiotics.
Right.
We don't even have ourselves regular meals or work out or rest properly. Are we somehow lesser than the things we take care of? I submit to you that oftentimes we think we do. We are subconsciously. And so taking that to learn our limits and to treat ourselves with the respect that the Lord gave us, being his child, recognizing that we are no longer our own property. We are the property of the King as his children, and we ought to treat ourselves like we are to take care of ourselves, like we're taking care of somebody else.
Right.
In that, we then begin to have self-respect for ourselves, and we begin to make friends with people who are good for us, who want what's best for us. Dude, we cannot go through adversity alone. That's why we need to know of Jesus. Mm-hmm. And Jesus gives us other people to be in the foxhole with.
Absolutely.
Wars have never been fought by one man, except for maybe in the one time where two armies were standing aside and two of those men fought from those armies, right? And this goes back to the reflection thing. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today. Right? Take a look at your past. Look at what you were before the adversity. Maybe you spent more time looking at yourself in the mirror than you did reading your word. Maybe you spent more time in your coping mechanisms than you did in your actual assertion of living your life. And maybe, just maybe, you can give yourself the grace to recognize you are doing better. Yeah. You are growing and you're loved. And as you grow into that, you can then begin to put your life, your house, into a good order, so that then you are more able to be used. The Lord will use you regardless, but you are more able to be used. You are more available for God to use you to bless other people. Take the rod out of your own eye before you look at the speck in your brother's, right?
Yeah.
That only comes by looking in the mirror. In that reflective stage, this third stage is so important. And it is in that reflection we can then look at those coping mechanisms and choose, rather than to pursue what is expedient, pursue what's meaningful. When we make that conscious choice to say, I'm going to delay gratification, I'm going to do something that genuinely makes me rest.
Right.
I'm not going to marathon Netflix or Amazon Prime or Hulu or The Mandalorian. I've done it. Listen, it happens, right? We make choices.
It's a good show.
Such a good show. I haven't watched the most recent episode because I'm just waiting until there's more than one. So I'm not hungering for it.
Yeah.
I can get a little fix, right? But in that, even in making the choice to watch that show, I'm choosing to wait until there's more episodes because that's more meaningful to me.
Yeah.
As opposed to the expediency of, it's out Friday, I'm going to watch it immediately.
Yeah.
I'm going to gratify myself as quickly as I can. Right? Choosing what's meaningful, to honor the Lord, to go on that long walk that you thought might be weird, to talk to that person that you genuinely wanted to get to know.
Yeah.
Instead of settling for that side relationship because it's more guaranteed that they might like you.
Oh, he preaching.
Right? To pursue the hard thing that you're afraid of putting in the effort and it wasting your time, to pursue it as opposed to deciding to stay in and to vegetate on your social media.
Right.
Pursue what's meaningful rather than what's important. And in that, first and foremost, the foundation is learning to tell the truth. First to yourself, and then to others. Or at least don't lie. You don't have to be transparent to people.
Yeah.
But tell the truth. I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Right? I don't want to enter into that thing. Don't let yourself become resignated and resentful. Right? And one of the biggest things I've noticed, especially in our generation, myself, I noticed this so much, is when we're going through adversity, There are times when we need people to just listen. But there are other times where we only let people listen. We don't listen.
Right.
And if we do, we only listen to respond with what we want to say. When we ought to listen and assume that that person that we're speaking to might know something that we don't. Kind of parroting back what they're saying helps us to avoid the trap of like, oh, this is what you're saying? I want to say this. As opposed to like, oh, this is what you're genuinely saying. I want to make sure I get it right. Especially in disagreements. And when you're in adversity, oftentimes you're going to have conversations with people where there are disagreements. You want to make sure that you understand what they're saying, at least.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
And part of that is being precise in what you mean to say as well. Dude, being precise in your speech is, and again, I want to clarify, this is from the 12 Rules for Life, that book I was reading. And I love it because there's so much biblical truth in all of it, right? Being precise in your speech is so important because if you can begin to clarify your problems in your adversity and be precise in what you actually have to do and what actually you can do towards it, oftentimes the stress is there, but the fog evaporates.
Yeah.
Dude, in that pause, if you can recognize whose you are, where you come from, that Jesus is with you, if you can talk with him and begin to treat yourself in a responsible way to take care of yourself, if you can have good people around you that will take care of you, that will point you in the right direction, if you can make sure that you are removing those coping mechanisms and growing in honest, good paths for the Lord in your life and health, right? If you can make sure that you're not just sabotaging your life for what you find entertaining in the moment, and you tell the truth, and you listen to people, and you then can be precise in what the issues are, you already, not just in introspection, but you are fully opening yourself up to the Holy Spirit to listen to the lessons that he wants you to learn and to internalize them and change into who he wants you to be. And when you do that, the resignation and the resentment from being in the adversity withers. Then you look at other people and they're doing things that are risky, or they're having fun in a dangerous way. You don't look at them like an old man who's like, get off my lawn, you stupid kid. Right? You look at them and you're like, wow, you're choosing your adversity. Like, you're going through it. You can make it. I'm proud of you for taking on that challenge and recognizing that your adversity strengthens you in life. Now you can look at the next adversity in a completely different perspective.
Yeah.
It's a workout tool. God is strengthening me. Dude, if this is such a big storm, God must have something much bigger for me that he is making sure that I'm ready to handle.
Absolutely. Right?
And as you recognize that, you can look in the middle of the storm. And I love the way he phrases this: pet a cat when you encounter a cat on the street, pet it, right?
Yeah.
You can recognize the little beautiful breaks in life, and they can give you genuine peace, as opposed to hunting for them consistently, looking for entertainment to entertainment, rest to rest, joy to joy, and finding none of it. And you grow numb and frustrated, and you abandon the things you love because you think that they are no longer of use to you anymore. Dude, the last stage of reflection, starting with your eyes on Jesus, is the most important thing. And the beautiful thing is that you can begin that reflection process, that last stage, while you're in the adversity. While you are stuck in there, when you take the time to pause, right? Hit the avatar state, so to speak, right? You take the time to freeze, to stop time, look up. Be like, God, you're here. I'm not alone. And you can start going through that list, so to speak, of those things that can help you. You can start recognizing your place, your direction, how you're treating yourself, assessing your situation, being precise about what you need to do, treating others with respect, listening, growing. The adversity goes from a terrible storm to an adventure. And you don't have to be the strong one who's so aggressive to handle it. You can even be the leaf in the wind, but recognize that the wind is carrying you to a better place.
Absolutely. And just kind of to bring us closer to an end here. Just something that I wanted to run by you as well as people at home watching.
Yeah.
It helps so much to write down things, and I've begun to kind of do that this week while I'm kind of facing the adversity of exams and just normal personal stresses of life, right?
Right.
You don't have to write a whole like paper or anything. Just write down a couple of things, right? Write down who you think God is, and also I want you to write down who you are.
Yeah.
Who are you? And I don't mean like, I'm Quentin, right? I a little bit deeper than that. What makes you tick?
Yes.
What are your faults? What are your talents, right? What makes you happy? What makes you sad? Writing things down will help it stick better, and you might find out something about yourself that you were scared to kind of bring up. And I want you to especially write those things down.
Yes.
Write down what you're struggling with. And I want you to parallel that with who God is and set up a game plan to tackle that specific adversity.
Yeah.
Because that's what it's all about, right? Life is all about hitting you hard. And they don't really tell us how to get back up. But this is at least a good start.
Yeah.
Knowing that you've got God on your side to get back up and smack the mess out of whatever life has for you.
Like that Wolf of Wall Street GIF where like he hits the guy with the keyboard and it spells out something terrible.
Yes, that one. Yes, I actually know what you're talking about. Something to that effect.
And I want to add something. Right?
Absolutely.
When we say make a battle plan.
Yeah.
A lot of times people who are not assertive in themselves, or they're not decisive and they're not rule makers, they view that as vague, and they're just like, you had me at like checking myself. Yeah, I could write down things about myself that I don't like, sure, but I don't know, like battle plan, like what? I want to encourage you, if you don't know where to start with that, straight up, just ask yourself and answer this question. You can even do it every day. I try to.
Yeah.
What is something that I can do, that I will do, to bring some order to the chaos I'm facing? Let me rephrase that in terms of our context in checking ourselves with the Lord.
Yeah.
What is something that I can do, that I will do, to allow the Lord to guide me through what I'm facing?
Yeah.
Just that simple question is the foundation of any plan that you can make. So if you are averse to the concept of a cloud of plan, and I'd rather not be bothered by having to sit down and make a whole life plan.
Yeah.
That one question, ask yourself that. What is something that I can do, that I will do, to allow Jesus to move me through this, to improve? That's it.
Absolutely.
Start there.
Yeah. Well, that's as far as the notes go. But the show is not over yet. For those that frequently watch Watcast, we know that at the very end we have kind of a freelance section for the tables to be turned, I guess you can say, right? Where we have our guest ask us anything or challenge us on anything, right? Because Josh and I, we like to think about things too. We're not always like, think about this. How are we going to grow if we're not, being helped by those that we like to talk to, right?
Yeah.
So, Gabe, the floor is all yours to pick my brain.
Ooh, okay. So we were together. It was my senior year, it was your freshman year.
Indeed.
And you've been through a lot in the 3 years since.
Yeah.
In your terms of mentorship, how do you see the fruit of the seeds that you're planting? And how do you choose to plan to ensure that the movement of the Holy Spirit in your heart continues to grow through those long after you're gone?
Yeah. That's a great question, actually. It's a tough one as well, and that's why we do this. Give me a second to think here.
Oh, dude, take your time.
Absolutely. Well, first, let me start by saying how I can ensure that those that I have poured into are continuing to be good and like able to pour into others. I'd say for that in particular, it starts with me.
Yeah.
We've been talking a whole lot about knowing yourself and taking care of yourself and knowing what makes you tick and where you falter and what you can do about it. Yo, I struggle with that a ton. I'm not going to say more than anyone because that's rather pompous, but like I got the problems, all right?
Same.
I am somebody who has so many passions but can only spread them out so much over my vessel.
Yeah.
Right? And there are times where it's waning on me. There are times where I am in a position where I can't really do any of the things that I've applied myself to do efficiently, making the entire operation just obsolete.
Right.
And that's because I often do not take care of myself. When I'm on autopilot, my goal is to run at all systems go, and when I crash, that's when the job's done. But there's a more efficient way to do that. There's a more efficient way to live life. You gotta sleep right, for starters. You gotta eat right. You've got to just
Starts with the little things.
Yeah, just find what makes you happy as well. Like rest is such an important thing, and eating well is such an important thing, and working out is such an important thing, and spending time with God is such an important thing. But in between those big things, there are little things that you need to kind of find and be thankful for.
Yeah.
And I say for the individual, it begins there, because that is where you find your happiness. And for people like me that kind of have a relationship with the concept of happiness as sand in the palm of your hand, where it's constantly slipping away, you have to take care of yourself to ensure that you can stay at 100% up here.
Right.
Because when it comes to the brain, that's your pilot. That's the thing that keeps you going, right? Fingers and hands and feet and legs moving and mouth moving. That's all the brain. So if it's not right, if your brain's not right, if your pilot's not right, what are you doing really? What was the first part of that question?
Just about how you like care for the seeds that you're planting now. How do you see them growing in the future after you're gone?
Yeah, hopefully well. No, but there are so many people that I am great friends with that I think that I'm pouring into. I'm loving them the best that I can, and being a good friend and kind of like pushing them forward in their faith, having the hard conversations.
Yeah.
And there are people that I am specific to mentor. Like as a GPC, we have leaders that we are put over to mentor and love and nurture and kind of sculpt into like great leaders, so that when they do go off to where they're going, they can be the best leaders that they can be for those that they are leading.
Yeah.
Shout out to Maya and Jonas if y'all are watching this. I love y'all. They're the best. Yeah, so when it comes to those that I'm pouring into and that I'm kind of mentoring, I just hope that they can continue to live well, and know that I'll miss them.
No.
Yeah, man, I keep my friends close to me. I love my people. And kind of in the middle of our break there, you were talking about how it's important that I have like my own solo thing going on after this is all done, and I will do that. I will, and I think it's needed as well. Just kind of time for me. And I think this new career path that I'm going to will kind of allow for that, being that I'll be kind of plunged into a new environment with this whole Coast Guard thing. Shout out to the Coast Guard.
Hey,
that'll be pretty dope.
Protect and serve.
Protect and serve, and we'll do it well.
Heck yeah.
But I think that's all for this episode. Gabriel, I want to thank you so much for being on the show. This was awesome. It was super last minute, but like, hey, you came and we had a great conversation.
It was a pleasure and an honor.
Absolutely. And for y'all at home, just a couple of things before we say goodbye. Just be good to yourself, and love others. And I know it sounds cheesy, but it's important. It's true.
Yeah.
Make sure that you're right. Make sure that your people are right. And I don't know.
Jesus will tell you when to fight and when to sit back.
Absolutely. And know that when it is time to fight, when it is time to knuckle up, know that he's there in your corner.
Amen.
So, next time on the Watcast, we're going to be doing something. I'm not going to tell you guys. You got to watch it yourself. All right. Peace out.